Welcome back to the Whiteout Report podcast, the final pregame edition of the regular season for Penn State, potentially the final pregame edition of the season, depending on if they're able to defeat Rutgers on Saturday or if where bowl season takes them, because I'm still not 100% convinced this team will accept the bowl berth, but we shall see. I am Marty Leap here for the Whiteout Report podcast, as always, with our friends at Proline TV. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like, follow, give us your super chats. Get in the comments. The comments were more active than usual for the Nebraska pre- and post-game shows, which were awesome. Let's keep that up. Dylan will be joining me here momentarily. He's wrapping a few things up on his end, and then we'll really dive into previewing Saturday's game, Penn State against Rutgers, 3:30 on the Big Ten Network. The battle for bowl eligibility. Both teams coming in at 5-6. Nittany Lions, of course, winners of 2 in a row after losing 6 in a row. Including coming off of by far their best performance of the season when they just manhandled Nebraska 37-10 last Saturday night at Beaver Stadium. You know, still don't have a coach in place yet. Terry Smith still the interim for now. That probably gets cleared up here within the next 48 to 72 hours. So that's one of the many reasons why you want to make sure you're subscribed to the channel, have your notifications on for us, because whenever they do hire a coach and we get ready to go on for our live reaction show to talk about the hire, you're going to want to be there. So again, make sure you're subscribed, have your notifications on, all of that stuff. Now, for Saturday, this is a game, the Nittany Lions, finishing up on the road in Piscataway against the Scarlet Knights. Again, both teams coming in at 5-6, but Penn State heavily favored in this one. Currently setting as a 10.5-point favorite. ESPN's FPI giving them an 82.8% chance of victory. Again, I think, this is a matchup that can be similar to the Nebraska matchup if you're Penn State. I think this is a game where you have an extreme advantage in the trenches, both offensive and defensive lines. And, we saw Saturday night against Nebraska where when you have that big of an advantage in the line of scrimmage play, it's typically going to go your way, potentially in a lopsided fashion. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen again on Saturday. Now, I will say, and this is not that Nebraska didn't, because the Cornhuskers were sitting at 7-3. We're looking, hey, we can win out, maybe get the 10 wins with a bowl victory, something that has not happened at Nebraska since Bo Pelini was there. But I do think this is a Rutgers squad that might be a little bit more motivated as well than Nebraska was. Again, first off, Rutgers needs to win to get the bowl eligibility and extend their season. As I'm sure many of you watching know, there's not exactly, the warm and fuzzy feelings between those at Rutgers University and Penn State when it comes to football. I think I've mentioned on here before how the Rutgers student section they'll have some obscenities they chant towards Penn State regardless of who Rutgers is playing that Saturday. So there's definitely some bad blood there. There's a lot of common recruiting battles here. Kids are recruited by both schools. Kids, who I'm sure Rutgers from New Jersey or Eastern PA who wanted to get a Penn State offer and never did. So again, I think this is a Rutgers squad that's going to be much more motivated than Nebraska was Saturday night. So that's always a factor. Going on the road, of course, in conference play, never easy as well. But this is still a game where I think the Nittany Lions should expect to walk away victorious. And again, they open as 10.5-point for, not open, as they currently sit as 10.5-point favorites for a reason. So this is one that, again, a lot of advantages for Penn State, which we'll start to get into here momentarily. But the biggest of which is the line of scrimmage play, where Penn State's just much better on both the offensive and defensive lines than Rutgers is, which, again, in football, as much as things change, football is always a line of scrimmage game. It always has been. It always will be. I think the Nittany Lions, of course, have a huge advantage here, as I said. So we dive into the stats here a little bit deeper. I mean, if you even just on the surface, I mean, Penn State, in recent weeks, really starting to come along defensively. The offense looking much better than it did for a majority of the season. Rutgers on the year, they're allowing 31.1 points per game, which is 115th nationally. They're 68th nationally in scoring offense. For comparison's sake, the Nittany Lions, for as much as they've struggled at times this year, 46 nationally in scoring offense. And very quietly, the defense all of a sudden down to just 20 points per game allowed, which puts them top 25 nationally. So still not where you wanted to be year one under Jim Knowles, but you're seeing it trend in the right direction. You're seeing it finish strong. Going to probably finish the year allowing under 20 points per game and ranked in the top 25 nationally in scoring defense. And, we all heard it coming in. You heard it from people in Columbus. You heard it from people in Stillwater, where Jim Knowles, it's years 2 and 3 with his defense where things really start to click and take off. And you can see that because the defense has been playing much better in recent weeks. Things are coming together. They're finishing strong. And I think that, just further solidifies the belief I've had all along in this coaching search that whoever the next offense or the next head coach, is a Penn State and offense coordinator as well, that the defense coordinator in 2026 is still going to be Jim Knowles, which I think is good for the program as a whole. So looking at Rutgers, again, it's a team where Penn State has a big advantage in the line of scrimmage. That doesn't change the fact that I think Rutgers is going to try to come out and run the ball. Antoine Raymond has had a really nice season for them, averaging 5 yards a carry, over 1,000 yards rushing, and 12 touchdowns. After him, the next highest rusher is Jay Sean Benjamin, 328 yards. So again, it's going to be similar to Nebraska last week. The key to stopping Nebraska's offense was slowing down and limiting Emmett Johnson, which Penn State, outside of one long run, did. He had that 58-yard run or whatever it was on, his second carry of the game. And then he averaged, I think it was 2.8, 2.9 yards per carry the rest of the game, something like that. So ripped off one long one early, and then Penn State kept him completely bottled up. It's going to be similar with Rutgers. You want to slow down Antoine Raymond. And if Penn State, I think they'd take that same trade-off as last week. Hey, we'll give up one chunk run if your other 20 you average, 2.5 yards a carry. Now, I think a difference between Rutgers and Nebraska is with Nebraska, I thought TJ Lateef played extremely well, but with Dylan Raiola hurt, you knew they were going to be limited throwing the ball. Rutgers quietly has a sneaky good passing attack. Ethan Killick-Manis, who, transferred from Minnesota, where he originally was recruited by then Minnesota offense coordinator, former Penn State offense coordinator, and now Rutgers offensive coordinator Kirk Shiraka, has had a really nice season for the Scarlet Knights. He's completed nearly 62% of his passes, has 2,786 yards, 17 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. Now, he's not any sort of a threat with his legs. Now, of course, a big part of this is due to sacks, but on the season, he has negative 25 yards rushing. So I think that does bode well for Penn State, though, because we have seen at times mobile quarterbacks have given them some problems. Nico Iamaleava in the UCLA game comes to mind. Not that Dante Moore is a mobile quarterback by any means, but his legs were definitely a factor in the Oregon game, where there were some times he used his legs to get away from pressure and make some plays. So I think that does bode well for them. McKillick-Manis is, quietly had a really, really good season for the Scarlet Knights. And one thing, too, is they've not been afraid Rutgers has to push the ball down the field a bit more than last year when they throw it as well. Last year, in his first year at Rutgers, Killick-Manis averaged just 6.2 air yards per attempt. This year, that's up to 8.1 air yards per attempt. So it shows that they are stretching the field a little bit more as well, or at least attempting to. And the receivers for Rutgers, it's a quietly a nice group. They have 4 guys with at least 42 receptions on the year in KJ Duff, Ian Strong, and DT Sheffield. So it's going to be a test a little bit for the Nittany Lions secondary, for AJ Harris, Davian Collins, that corner group, Zion Tracy, even back at the safeties with Zakee Wheatley and some of these guys we've talked about a lot this year, Dejon Lane, a group that has had some struggles at time, but quietly has put together a nice season, has been this secondary. And it's going to be a test for them again on Saturday. Because again, you have Duff, you have Strong, you have Sheffield for Rutgers. All three of them, have caught at least 49 balls this year. Duff leads the way with 55 receptions for 957 yards. Ian Strong has 49 for 725. DT Sheffield, 42 for 550. And same thing with touchdowns, 6 for Duff, 5 for Strong, 4 for Sheffield. So it's not going to be, I think a lot of times when you think of Rutgers, you don't think of them as being a team that can do much offensively. But this is a Rutgers offense that there's some playmakers there. As I mentioned, Antoine Raymond over 1,000 yards rushing and averaging 5 yards a carry this year. Ethan Killick-Manis honestly might be having the best season of a Big Ten quarterback that just absolutely nobody talks about because of him being on Rutgers. And then those receivers have put together a nice season as well. But I think one thing, if you're Penn State, you look at this again. I mentioned earlier, Rutgers 68th nationally in scoring offense. If you look at the best defenses they have faced, that's, when they've struggled. They only scored 10 against Oregon. They only scored 9 last week against Ohio State. Illinois held them to 13. So I think if you're Penn State, you like to think of yourself as being one of those better defenses, being a defense that you think is capable of slowing an offense down, capable of preventing an offense from kind of reaching peak performance. So I think that's going to be the expectation on Saturday. And again, I think that'll start up front with Penn State's defensive line, against a Rutgers offensive line that is an area where I think Penn State has an advantage. I also think, not just having the advantage, but the defensive line of Penn State has played really well in recent weeks. Zane Durant and Denai Dennis Sutton have been awesome the past few weeks and are coming off of one of their, Denai Dennis Sutton against Michigan State was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week 2 weeks ago. Zane Durant in his game against Nebraska last Saturday, his best performance of the season. True freshman Yvonne Kemajo has really quietly put together a nice season for the Nittany Lions at defensive end. They should get true freshman Chaz Coleman back in the mix on Saturday as well. He looked like an absolute budding superstar until he missed the last 3 games due to some illness issues, some injury issues. He should be back in the mix. And the young DTs too. Xavier Gilliam just continues to play well. I know he's not a young guy. He's final year of eligibility, but Alonzo Ford and other guys had a nice year defensive tackle flying under the radar. So again, this defensive line of Penn State's, I think they have a big advantage over the Rutgers offensive line. And in recent weeks, they've played extremely well, coming off of, as a group, I would say by far their best game of the season against Nebraska, with the way they, were able to limit Emmett Johnson, the way they were able to never really let TJ Lateef get comfortable in the pocket. So I think this is one where that's where it's going to start for Penn State on Saturday. If they're going to knock off the Scarlet Knights, it's going to start with the performance of the defensive line. And I think you feel pretty good about it if you're Penn State. And I mentioned earlier, Rutgers having a trio of solid receivers with a quarterback who's more than capable of getting the ball to them. Obviously, if your defensive line is getting pressure, getting in the quarterback's face, making things difficult on Ethan Kelly-McManus, that makes things easier for your secondary, right? If you're an AJ Harris or Zion Tracy or Davion Collins, Darius Dixon, who, continues to play really strong ball as a true freshman. If your defensive line is getting pressure and the quarterback can't take the time to set his feet, go through his reads, through his progression, step into his throws, all of those things, your job as a defensive back becomes 10 times easier. So I think that's something that Penn State's going to be looking to do in order to find success on Saturday. Now, I will say, if you're Rutgers, if you're looking to find success or exploit anything against the Penn State defense, it's still, I think, at the linebacker position. It's still an area where Penn State is not super depth with experience. Even with, you've lost Tony Rojas for the year a long time ago, and the young guys are starting to play more and have shown some nice things. True freshman Alex Tash, redshirt, I think junior now, I want to say Keon Wiley, both seeing their minutes increase in recent weeks. Both have done some nice things, but still young guys in terms of, especially Tash being a true freshman, in terms of game experience. Wiley has missed a lot of time due to injury the past few years. So, you still have some question marks there behind Amari Campbell, who has had a really nice season for Penn State after transferring in from North Carolina, and behind Dom DeLuca, who, Dom DeLuca is going to go down as a folk hero in program history, from the walk-on to everything he's done, especially in the playoff game against SMU last year. But again, as I've come on here and said throughout the year, it's not a knock on Dom whatsoever, but he's got his physical limitations, his athletic limitations. So I think if you're Rutgers, that's the area you look to try to exploit against this Penn State defense, because the defensive line and the secondary really have rounded into shape in recent weeks. I know against Indiana, there was the drive at the end of the game where Fernando Mendoza led the Hoosiers down the field to score and win. But that was more of just ridiculous catches where, you had guys in tremendous coverage and there wasn't a whole lot more they could do. So I think if you're Rutgers against this Penn State defense, that's where you look to make your hay. Is going to be trying to exploit these linebackers in any way you can, because that's still the most questionable part of the Penn State defense. But all in all, as I said, this is a Penn State defense that in recent weeks really has started around into shape and has started to, you can see the Knowles system starting to click. And that's in no way, shape, or form is going to excuse some of the performances early in the year, specifically that UCLA game, when they were just absolutely just gashed play after play after play. But still, you see the pieces falling into place, and the defense is finishing the season strong. And I think that'll continue on Saturday against Rutgers. As I said, this is a better Scarlet Knight offense than you're used to seeing from Rutgers. But when they've gone up against teams that are more talented than them, which despite the teams having the same record, I still feel confident saying Penn State's the more talented team. Their offense has really struggled this year. So I would expect, Penn State's defense if they come out and play to their capability on Saturday for that same thing to happen again. Excuse me one second. But once again, thank you for being here with us. The Whiteout Report podcast, pregame edition, preview edition, whatever you want to call it, previewing Penn State and Rutgers this Saturday at 3:30. Live on the Big Ten Network from Piscataway, the Nittany Lions and the Scarlet Knights, both looking to get to bowl eligibility, both coming in with a record of 5-6. I'm Marty Leap, always here with you. My partner, Dylan Callahan-Crawley, will be joining me here in a minute or two. Make sure you like, subscribe. Again, turn your notifications on because probably at some point in the next 48 to 72 hours, we're going to get some clarification on who the next permanent head coach of Penn State football is going to be. You're going to want to join us when we come on here to talk about that in the coming days. Give us your super chats. Get in the comments. As those of you commented on the post-game show after we went off the air Saturday night, so you get your comments in there. I'll find them. I'll get back to you later in the week with an answer if you have a question. But we've discussed matchup of the Rutgers offense against the Penn State defense. I've gone into the details as to why I think that's a good matchup for the Nittany Lion defense. So now the offense. I again, same way. I think this is a matchup that it favors Penn State. I mean, the offense in recent weeks, it has started to look much better. For the majority of the Indiana game, after a bit of a slow start, the offense was very good. Against Michigan State, they just methodically ran the ball right down the throats of the Spartans. And against Nebraska, again, total domination up front. That's where it all started with the offensive line. I would expect to see a similar approach on Saturday. So, you go into this, it's as always with Penn State's offense, starts with the running backs. Katron Allen got over 1,000 yards on the season against Nebraska, up to 1,077 on the year, averaging 5.7 yards a carry, 14 touchdowns, broke Evan Royster's school record to become the program's all-time leading rusher in that game. So I'm sure, in what I'm assuming is going to be his final game as a Nittany Lion, because even if they get to a bowl and they accept the berth, I don't see Katron Allen playing in that game. I'm assuming he'll sit out to start to prepare for the NFL draft. I'm sure he's going to want to go out with a bang. Same for Nicholas Singleton, who the last few weeks has started to look a little bit more like Nicholas Singleton again after really struggling for a majority of the season. 463 yards on the year, averaging 4.1 a carry, 11 touchdowns, though. So he's still been finding the end zone plenty. Same thing with a receiver, has a receiving touchdown in the year and is averaging 9 yards a catch. Singleton also looking to join Katron Allen in the record books. As I mentioned, Allen against Nebraska became the program's all-time leading rusher. Singleton tied Saquon Barkley's school record for both rushing touchdowns and total touchdowns. So I'm sure it's going to be a point of emphasis for this coaching staff on Saturday to get Singleton both those records. Obviously, if you can get him a rushing touchdown, you get them both in one swoop. I'm sure that's going to be on the mind of Terry Smith and the staff early. I would expect the first time Penn State gets down, inside the 10, inside the 5, to see Singleton in the backfield in an effort to get him that touchdown, get him that record. And again, you feel good for Allen, for Singleton, for these guys to be able to finish the season strong with the way the season's gone. Of course, not the way anyone anticipated. No one, and when we were sitting here in August, and the Lions were, 11 points off of Texas for being the preseason number 1 team or whatever it was. Nobody expected them to come in the Rutgers game at 5-6, and with James Franklin fired. But to the credit of Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, they've still come out this year, especially Singleton with how much he struggled early. They can still put themselves in the record books, which Allen's already done. Singleton a chance to do it Saturday. And I think it's good for them too, because I've mentioned this a few times throughout the year. You're talking about two of the best players in program history. You're talking about two guys who are parts of some of the biggest moments, biggest wins, some of the best teams in the history of this program. And unfortunately, for a lot of these seniors, people are probably, at least, in the short term, going to remember this more than they're going to remember them winning a Rose Bowl as a freshman when they went 11-2, or, last year when they were 13-3 and one play away from the national championship game. But they deserve to be remembered well and remembered fondly, because this is a very special senior group that has done a lot of great things for Penn State, led by Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. So it's good to see them, finish the year getting their names in the record book. So like I said, I'm sure it'll be a point of emphasis for the staff early on Saturday to get Nicholas Singleton into the end zone to break the tie he now has with Saquon Barkley for being the program's all-time leader in both rushing and total touchdowns. Now, when they go to throwing the ball, Ethan Grunkemeyer has, started to really come along in recent weeks. Just very efficient against Michigan State, very efficient against Nebraska last week. And one thing with Grunkemeyer is he's not been afraid to trust his arm, to give his receivers a chance to make plays, to push the ball down the field, which is something that, people have clamored for from this Penn State offense for a long time now. And it's been better. It's been better the last few weeks with Grunkemeyer. On the year, he's completed 67.5% of his passes, 870 yards, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But the biggest thing is the last 2 weeks, no turnovers from Ethan Grunkemeyer. The turnover bugaboo hurt him early in his first 3 starts against Indiana, against Ohio State, and against Iowa. Now, that's 3 of the probably 5 to 10 best defenses in the country, with 2 of those games being on the road. But still, the injury, or the turnover bugaboo was there early for Grunkemeyer. It has not been the last few weeks. And, not coincidentally, the Penn State offense has looked really good, and the Nittany Lions have won each of the last 2 weeks. At receiver, Trevor Pena has, played better lately. Up to 40 receptions on the year for 416 yards and a touchdown, averaging 10.4 yards a reception. Devontae Ross averaging 14.9 a reception with 5 scores. We've seen some big plays from Ross in recent weeks, including that 75-yard touchdown 2 weeks ago against Michigan State. But I think at receiver, the player people are most interested in is true freshman Kobe Howard, who has continued to see his playing time increase in recent weeks. Still hasn't touched the ball a ton, just 5 receptions on the year, but is averaging 19.8 yards a reception. So when Howard has been targeted and has been able to get the ball in his hands, he's been able to make plays. So I think that's one where you want to see more of Kobe Howard on Saturday, see if he can continue to make plays in this game as a receiver for the Nittany Lions. Give me 1 second, everybody. My dog's currently being evil. I have to go correct him. Mark. Sorry about that. But yeah, you want to see more of Kobe Howard. Again, his playing time has increased. He hasn't touched the ball a ton, but when he has had the ball in his hands, he's been a playmaker, averaging almost 20 yards of reception. So you're hopeful that you're going to see more of Howard involved in the offense on Saturday at the receiver position, along with some of these older guys who, again, Trevor Pena, Devontae Ross. I don't know, if they go to a bowl, if they accept the bowl berth, if these guys will play. I think it's more likely for them than some of the other seniors, just because, Pena and Ross, especially Ross, is being his first year as a power 4 player, wanting to put as much on tape as he can to get, for the draft and for that sort of thing. So I think that, that'll be important on Saturday as well. I apologize if you saw me throw the phone pumpkin across the room. My dog's chewing on my steps. So, but yeah, that's the beauty of doing things live sometimes. But anyway, at the receiver position, again, I think you'll see the usual mix of those top 2 along with Kyron Hudson, but hopefully Kobe Howard will get some more touches, and that'll help the Nittany Lions and, help Howard and hopefully set him up to potentially be at Penn State next year. If you look at tight end, Andrew Rappelier had a touchdown catch against Nebraska last week. He's another guy who, finally looking healthy after missing last season with that torn ACL. So you won't be surprised to see him be a bigger part of the offense. And Luke Reynolds, too, a tight end, averaging 10 yards of reception this year. Another plays a fake punt last week. So that's where we're going to be with the Nittany Lion offense. As I said, I think this is a game Penn State's going to win. They're 10.5-point favorites for a reason. ESPN's FPI giving them an 82% chance to win this game for a reason. I think that you're going to see them come out, take care of business against Rutgers. I think they'll win this thing on Saturday and, get the bowl eligibility. And then that's when the question becomes, do they accept the bowl berth? I think they will. Dylan, I don't know how you feel. If they get the bowl eligibility, hold on, we lost them again. But if they get the win to get the bowl eligibility, the question is whether or not will they accept bowl eligibility. There you are. I don't know. I don't know how you feel on that, but I'll lead you off with that, and I got to go yell at my dog for a second, so I'm going to pop out. But if they win Saturday, which I think we both agree they will,
they'll
accept a bowl berth.
One, I don't know what you talked about so far, but yeah, I have no doubts they'll beat Rutgers on Saturday. This team has been playing really good football the last 2 weeks. Had they played this way, I think for most of the season, I think we're talking about a much different outcome for the season. I don't know if they beat the likes of Oregon, Ohio State, or Iowa in this probably Iowa if they had played this way in that game, but yeah, they would have definitely been a much better outcome of the season. That being said, expect them to win on Saturday against Rutgers, get bowl eligible, and I expect them to ultimately accept accept a bowl berth wherever that may be. It seems like it's going to likely be New York or Nashville. Outside chance at Detroit. Yeah, I think this team is really close together, really close bonded team, and I think they would really value having that one last game together, even though the season hasn't gone the way they hoped. Who's going to play in that game remains to be seen. I'm sure there'll be some opt outs and there will be guys getting ready to go into the transfer portal as well. But, this may be the last shot for some of these players to, play under some members as coaches. That's the other thing to consider here is who knows what the team looks like coming bowl season. What's the coaching staff going to look like? Who's coaching that game? Terry Smith may stay around to the next head coach. He may not. I'm not sure if you talked about the coaching search at all yet, but it's just something to consider in all that what could transpire, who's coaching this team during the bowl game, all that. So, but I do think they'll accept the bowl bid if they do win on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree, and that's a new stance for me. I thought for much of the season if they got there, they wouldn't accept it, but I think you hit on all the points why I think they will now. This team has shown they're a very close-knit group. I know some players have already come out and said, Amari Campbell included, that if they get to a bowl berth, they have all intents of playing in it. Now, you raised a good point of not just who would be their player-wise, but coaching-wise as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure a lot of these guys are already know they're not going. Not only do they already know they're not going to be at Penn State next year, they may already know where they are going to be. I'm sure there's going to be some guys going to follow James Franklin to Blacksburg once Penn State season's over. You look at a guy like Phil Troutline, for example. Each of the last 2 off seasons, he's turned down the opportunity to go coach in the NFL. He's turned down Alabama. He's going to have no lack of suitors. So there's plenty of guys who, are going to be on to new things, and that's where you get into who's even there to coach the game as well, which is a factor. But I do think a big part of it is these guys are going to, like you said, want to play together one last time. For those who play, I think they're going to feel like they owe something to Terry Smith, especially if Terry Smith is not hired as the permanent head coach, which I didn't get into the coaching search yet. We can get into that here shortly, but I think we both agree that's not going to happen. It's not going to be Terry Smith. But
yeah,
especially if Terry is not the permanent coach and is not retained, I think these guys are going to want to send him out with a victory. So I think that's a factor too. But yeah, I agree that I think they'll accept the bowl berth. And I know one thing that's been very popular as a potential bowl destination, you touched on New York, would be a potential pinstripe bowl matchup against Pitt, which this pinstripe bowl itself, TV networks would eat that up because Penn State, even this year in Penn State's been horrible. They're still a ratings machine. And, that's where you're going to see, because we've seen this before, like early in the James Franklin tenure, those first 2 years, the year coming out of COVID when they went 7-6 and lost. And I think it was either the Capital One or the Outback Bowl to Arkansas. Those years, they were probably overslotted on bowls based off their record, but you're still Penn State, you're still a name, you're a ratings monster, you're going to do well in those things, so bowls are still going to want you. But yeah, I'm with you. I think they will accept the bowl berth.
Yeah, I have almost no doubts at this point that they will. And a lot of it just goes back to how tight bonded this team is. But catch me up on what you've talked about so far, and if I have any thoughts on what you talked about, I'll quickly give them.
Yeah, well, I mentioned, I think this is a game similar to the Nebraska game where Penn State big advantage in the line of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively. I also mentioned, I think with Rutgers, a lot of times people think Rutgers, they don't think that you don't think of good offense with Rutgers. And if you've
No.
watched Rutgers in some of their marquee matchups this year, 9 points against Ohio State, 13 against Illinois, 10 against Oregon. But when you think Kelly Manus and these receivers and Antoine Raymond at running back, there's definitely some playmakers there. So this isn't as we've seen against Rutgers plenty of times in past years, this isn't the defense can just walk off the bus and, come hold them to 6 points kind of offense.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that stance. I mean, you look at just, Rutgers overall this season, bringing up the stats here quickly. Another team, I'm sure you mentioned, fine for bowl berth here. So both these teams fine for it. But yeah, you talk about that offense. They're averaging 28 points per game. It's 28 points is pretty good in college football. The overall ranking of 68 sounds meh. But, I feel like once you get past 28, 29 points, we're starting to talk really about decimals that separate, 68 from 40, 40 from 32. The top 30, yeah, there's a little bit more separation, but it's an all-around above average offense. They're averaging almost 400 yards per game this year. Ethan Caligmanis this Penn State secondary has struggled at times this season. Ethan Caligmanis and this Rutgers wide receiver room is a room that can overall take advantage of mistakes. We've seen them do throughout this season. On the ground, they're nothing special, only averaging 3.5 yards per carry, but Antoine Raymond is averaging 5 yards per carry this season, over 1,000 yards on the ground, 1,200 yards from scrimmage. Yeah, Penn State's Penn State's defense today or tomorrow is going to have to show up in this game if they want to win it. They can't sleepwalk their way to, like you said, 6 points here. They're going to have to come out and earn it like they did against Nebraska. I mean, we look at Nebraska. They kept that team to whatever it was, and I know they're not necessarily a world beater, but they have 16 points against Iowa in the third quarter today, and and Emmett Johnson has 183 yards. I think based off what we've seen the last two games, the defense is going to show up. I'm not surprised it's finally performing to a quality level. It's been, 11-week games now of this team playing together in this system. It is a system that takes a long time to learn. We're starting to see the dividends of that. Unfortunately, if Jim Knowles returns next year, they're kind of hitting the reset button with all the roster change that's probably going to take place.
Yeah, I mentioned that too with the defense, how, we heard coming in from people in Columbus and Stillwater, wherever it was, it takes some time. And we're seeing it start to click in recent weeks. You're seeing things start to fall in place with this defense. And, you mentioned the effort from the defense. I agree it's going to be there. And one other thing I mentioned before you hopped on is you look at tonight, Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, Zakee Wheatley, some of these senior leader guys who are probably playing their last game in Nittany Lion uniform on Saturday. Right. I think those are three who know they're top 100, potentially top 50 draft picks, probably skip the bowl to get ready for the draft. They're not gonna want to go out without a stellar performance. And we've seen that in recent weeks. Right. I mean, Dennis Sutton and Zane Durant the last 2 weeks have been tremendous on this defensive line. So that's going to be a big part of it. And, I agree. The quarterback and the receivers definitely can hurt them, but in the secondary has been susceptible at times, but I think the secondary has been better in recent weeks. I think getting AJ Harris healthy combined with, the baptism by fire that Darius Dixon got have done wonders for the secondary. And also, if you can get this defensive line going, get that pass rush going, don't let Kelly Manis get comfortable in the pocket, set his feet, those sorts of things. Obviously, that then in turn makes life a lot easier for the secondary as well.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. And, I think a lot of these seniors, maybe not just seniors, I think, a lot of this team, seniors, juniors, sophomores, freshmen, are going to be inspired to go out there and play a game because a lot of these guys know that this is possibly the very last time they suit up at Penn State. And while they may leave, it doesn't mean they don't have, love for the program or the fan base, the coaching staff, stuff like that. It is strictly a business decision. I'm sure a lot of these guys are going to follow Jim. Maybe not a lot, but I'm sure amount of guys are going to follow James to Virginia Tech, and but I think there's going to be, the desire from these guys to go out, on a strong note with the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think part of it too is in today's college football where things are much different than in the past. Where in the past, yeah, you'd want to finish strong because you want to impress your new coaching staff that's coming in. Well, in today's world of the transfer portal, you want to finish strong because you can be impressing coaching staffs all over, and you can be working. It's almost like being a free agent in the NFL.
I forget. I forget which player it was, but one of the players during the press conferences this week said that that they're going out there because there's guys out there who still need to put stuff on tape.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting stuff on tape maybe for the next coaching staff, but you're putting stuff on tape because the way Penn State fans should honestly consider is that everybody is, until they say otherwise, everybody's in the transfer portal.
Yep. Until what is it? What you have until what, January 4th or whatever to enter the portal. Until that date passes, no one on this roster you should expect to be back. And then once that date passes, you can look to see who's still here and take it from there 100%.
Because a lot of people,
that's college football today.
Right. And a lot of players are going to take their tape, and even if they don't announce they're entering the transfer portal, they have their agents, they have high school coaches, they have advisors, whatever you want to call them. They have people that they will have their tape shopped out to coaches across the country, and players will assess where their value is across the country, if it's best for them to stay at Penn State on their new coaching staff or go elsewhere. That's what is going to basically happen over the next 6 weeks until then. So that's why this game is also important, because there's a lot of younger guys who I'm sure we'll see quite a few younger guys here play to get some tape out there. Because at the end of the day, it is business at this point, and these kids as if I'm not only a couple years older than them, but these kids have to, consider their futures, and part of considering that future is that the best future for them may not be at Penn State. Ultimately it will be decided by what this next coaching staff ultimately decides about each player. I'm sure, there are guys we can list off the top of our heads: Chaz Coleman, Darius Dixon, Ethan Grunkemeyer. The list goes on and on. I'd put Kobe Howard on that list, and a couple others, Andrew Appelier, Cooper Cousins.
Yvonne Kemble is going to throw in there too.
Yeah, Max Granville. There's a lot of guys on this roster that Penn State is going to want to keep around. Pat Kraft, I'm sure, has already talked to those players about his desire for them to stick around. They are going to get very good NIL offers from Penn State. They're also going to get very good NIL offers from other programs. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. There are going to be guys that Penn State absolutely wants to retain. But until otherwise, consider everybody in the transfer portal.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people aren't going to necessarily like that outlook, especially some of the, more the traditional old school college football fans. But at the same time, I get it. And I know this is another thing people don't like to hear. And it's true, though. You don't, very rarely do you commit to a school, right? Unless you grew up. Yeah, unless you grew up, like a Dom DeLuca, for example, in, bleeding blue and white, where you were always going to go to Penn State as long as you had the opportunity, no matter what. You typically commit to a coach, right? And when that coach moves on, you should have the right to move on then too. And I don't have an issue with that. This isn't.
That was the big argument for the transfer portal, right?
But this still isn't true professional, where you're, a 25, 30-year-old adult who knows how to adult out in the real world, getting paid tens of millions of dollars to do this, and you just roll with the punches and go to your job. That's not what this is yet. So if these kids want to move on to play for James Franklin still, or wherever their position coach surfaces, or to another school with a coach they had a good relationship with going back to their recruiting days, I understand that. I don't have an issue with it. And because of the same token, whoever the hire is, they're going to bring plenty of guys with them as well from where they're at now, or guys that, hey, I recruited you in high school and you didn't commit to me, but it's not working out for you at your current school. Do you want to come with me to Penn State? Like, that's going to happen. It's going to happen both ways. But as you said, you look at this roster, there's a lot of young talent there. I mean, you mentioned it. We know Kraft has already had discussions with some of these guys. But you shouldn't put a whole lot of salt or much of anything into anyone listed on their roster until, about January 4th or 5th, whenever the portal's closed. And then you can see who's still here. And then, the portal additions that are going to happen will start trickling in as well.
Yeah. Should we transition?
Well, real quick, one other thing before you hopped on and talked about, I want to get your I know you're going to have the same opinion of it, but still give you a chance to talk on it. So with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, get two guys, I'm assuming Saturday's their last game in blue and white. Two guys I would expect to get ready for the draft. And
I'd be curious about
maybe not Singleton. But
I don't know if maybe both, because here's the problem. What is Katron's draft stock right now? A fourth, maybe?
Oh, yeah. I don't even think it's a matter of that. I think it's more of don't risk getting hurt in the bowl game.
Yeah.
Especially at running back where, we've seen how that's gone in the NFL.
No, yeah, because these guys are such down the board, and that's not saying they're bad. They're just
I think they're both.
Katron doesn't have Katron doesn't have the speed, and athleticism to be a high draft pick. Nick Singleton doesn't have the resume this year to be a high draft pick.
Right or wrong, Nick Singleton is going to be viewed as a gadget guy.
Right. So both those guys, one injury, they go from being a 4th, 5th round pick to not being picked. So I agree. But go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say you have Allen last week broke Royster's school rushing record. I think this Saturday, the first time they get down inside the 10-5-yard line, you're going to see Nicholas Singleton just get fed the ball. Because again, he's tied Saquon for the school rushing touchdown record and total touchdowns. You want to get him both those records. If you can get him a rushing touchdown early and 2 birds, 1 stone it, that's what you want. So I'm sure that'll be a point of emphasis of Terry and the coaching staff on Saturday. They're other than winning the game, I think their number one goal on Saturday is probably going to be getting Nicholas Singleton that touchdown record.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think they're going to give Nick all the opportunities in the world to get this record on Saturday. Last week I think it was like 25-10 in carries. I wouldn't be surprised if Nick gets the lion's share of the carries this week, just because they're going to try to get him that touchdown. And Nick is still, I know he hasn't had the season that he had hoped for, but at the end of the day, Nicholas Singleton is still going to finish top 5 in Penn State rushing yards all time. Not a bad career at all for Singleton.
Especially at a school that has the running back, and pedigree of Penn State.
Yeah, and with a good day, because, let me do the math here quickly. Not very good off the top of my head.
I will say real quick while you're doing the math, it's not outlandish to expect a good day because Rutgers is allowed the most rushing yards in the Big Ten. The 6.9 yards per carry they allow is the most in the Big Ten by 1.5 yards. And their 23.6% explosive run percentage against is the worst by 5%. So they're not just the worst rush defense in the Big Ten. They're the worst rush defense in the Big Ten by a pretty big stretch.
Yeah, so I thought I misread Saquon's total yards. So Nick is 23 yards behind Cord Warner. He's going to finish 4th all time in rushing yards. He's going to finish number 1 all time in rushing touchdowns. Still a hell of a career for Nick. With a really good game, he could finish. No, he's not going to surpass Katron. So he'll finish 4th all time in total yards from scrimmage as well. So really strong career. And you look at rushing touchdowns. He is tied for rushing touchdowns, but something that nobody noticed last week. Nicholas Singleton is the all-time leader in touchdowns from scrimmage.
I thought he was still tied with Barkley for that one.
No, he has 52 touchdowns all time. 52 all-time touchdowns from scrimmage. Okay. One more than Saquon, but he's tied for Saquon in rushing touchdowns. So, at the end of the day, and this is a credit to James Franklin and the recruiting staff when they're around, but Saquon and Katron, to sign both those guys in one class, and for them to finish both top 5 in rushing yards. Let's see what Katron's going to finish. Number 3 and number 1 in rushing touchdowns, and number 1 and 3 in touchdowns from scrimmage. That is one hell of a recruiting class duo, and something Penn State fans will never see again, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a long time. Do you see that again at any major school where you have,
especially a school like Penn State that has such a rich tradition at running back.
Yeah, I mean, you may see that at, if you can find a smaller school, a MAC school or something that has a good two back class and is able to retain them. But, at a school that recruits at the level Penn State does and has the history at the running back position Penn State does, you may never see something like that again. Two guys put up those kinds of numbers from the same recruiting class, having their careers overlap. It's something, like you said, that all parties involved should be proud of. And I think, with Katron and Nick as well, credit to them for fighting through what has been definitely a miserable season for them in a lot of ways, to just, keep fighting, keep grinding through it and finishing strong here.
I'm sure we want to talk a little bit about the coaching search here. Do we want to give picks for the Rutgers game quickly?
Yeah, we'll do picks and then we can get into the coaching search.
All right. I'm going to make it easy. Give me Penn State 34, Rutgers 16. No, 17.
17. All right. First thought that you were saying 30-4. I was going to remind you this game does not involve Iowa, so don't expect
Iowa did get a safety today.
But no, I agree as well. I think Penn State wins it comfortably. I'll say 35-14. Again, I think this is one where they're just much better in the trenches. And, I think Rutgers is going to come out motivated. I mentioned this before earlier on the show. I think not that Nebraska wasn't motivated, but I think you might see a little bit more motivation from Rutgers because the game's in Piscataway. Nobody at Rutgers likes Penn State. They need to win to get the bowl eligibility. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is one where, maybe you got to weather a little bit of a storm early. Rutgers comes out, punches it in for a score in their first drive, something along those lines. But yeah, I think Penn State ultimately just the far superior team. They're playing the best football they've played all season here these last couple of weeks, coming off of by far their best game of the season. I'll say the Nittany Lions pick up a 35-14 victory over Rutgers.
If Penn State wins by 17 or more points, or in double digits in general this year, 6 wins by double digits, 1 loss by double digits, and then 5 one-score losses.
Including, 2 of them were 1-point losses, I believe?
Yeah, back-to-back 1-point losses.
Back-to-back, yeah.
And a 3-point loss.
Yeah. So, a very strange season. And I think everything about this season has been strange, and that's just goes to show it further. And speaking of strange, here we are, something we never thought we'd be doing in August either, sitting here, Thanksgiving weekend discussing who Penn State's new head coach is going to be. So before Dylan and I get into any coaching search talk here, again, thank you for watching us today. Make sure you like, subscribe to the channel, turn your notifications on, because I would assume that at some point, 48 to 72 hours from now or so, we're probably going to start to get some clarification on this. And whenever we come together to break down who the hire is and talk about the new coach, you're going to want to be here for that. But Penn State coaching search. I definitely think, tell me if you disagree. I don't think you do, but I definitely think we're in the fourth quarter of this thing finally.
We're not in the fourth quarter. We're not just in the fourth quarter. This is fourth quarter, tied ball game. You're on the 10-yard line. It's like third down, so you got 2 plays left here. No, this thing, and fourth quarter, less than 30 seconds ago, 10-yard line. You're either going to win this game or tie it, because I think that's a good way to put it. The tie scenario here, I know it's a name you don't love, but a tie scenario here is Bob Chesney from James Madison. I think I mean everybody who follows Penn State. I don't think it's an open I don't think it's a behind the door secret that, if Penn State right now has a mystery candidate. Everybody has been reporting this mystery candidate, including Josh Pate. Who that mystery candidate is, it remains a mystery. Credit to Pat Kraft and the Penn State administration, whoever's in on this search. They have not let it slip yet in the search in the last few days of who the candidate is. That being said, it is perceived to be as Pate put it, a name that would be equivalent to Sting coming down from the rafters in WCW. A name that wouldn't be in your top 15 guesses of head coaches. but also not a fit for Penn State in his opinion. So that narrows it down to, well, who knows how many people that narrows it down to. But it makes you think it's a big name. The secrecy behind it makes you think it's a big name. Could it be a name that we've already talked about? Sure. I think Penn State reporters are being very coy. I think Penn State reporters know who it is, but they have sworn to secrecy about, again, releasing that name. If the name gets out there before they announce it, it is going to come from a national source, a Pete Damel, a Pete, a Nakos. It's going to come from one of those guys. But the tie scenario here is Bob Chesney. The win scenario is perhaps whoever this mystery candidate is. Perhaps the mystery candidate is actually a Drew Aller interception, but that may have been mean. But
it was Dylan Finnegan coming across in overtime. But
yeah, perhaps that the mystery candidate's actually a loss in the end. But it's perceived to be a big name, so you imagine that's the win here. The other win, of course, is the outside chance at Kalen DeBoer. But for that to happen, Alabama has to lose to Auburn.
Yeah, and that's when you said, we're fourth quarter, 30 seconds to go. I was thinking more of, like a minute and a half, and both teams have all three timeouts because depending on what happens in the Iron Bowl, I don't – even if they get things with the mystery candidates seemingly across the line – and I also think there's a scenario where the mystery candidate actually is DeBoer because there was the DeBoer smoke, and then the DeBoer smoke just vanished out of just seemingly with a snap of a finger. And then the next day there's the mystery candidate, and it makes me wonder if maybe, the mystery candidate isn't a mystery. It is actually Kalen DeBoer and them just trying to keep things quiet. But again, I think, Alabama has to lose to Auburn. If Alabama beats Auburn and they're getting ready for the SEC championship game, and they're getting ready for the college football playoff, it's not going to be DeBoer, and it's probably Bob Chesney then, or this mystery candidate if the mystery candidate isn't DeBoer. But I think if they lose to Auburn, I wouldn't be surprised if things, Saturday night, because, it's a 7:30 kick. It's Jordan Hare at night. It's Jordan Hare. I'm sure a lot of you know this, but if you don't, Jordan Hare is to the SEC what Kinnick Stadium is to the Big Ten. Things that shouldn't happen there. So I don't think it's impossible at all Alabama loses that game. And if they would, it wouldn't surprise me if Saturday night into Sunday morning, into Sunday afternoon, things potentially escalate quickly between Kalen DeBoer and Penn State. I know through a lot of the search, I thought Drinkowitz was the guy that made a lot of sense. And if I had to make a guess, it would be him. It seems like that there was definitely, at least for a big portion of this, some serious mutual interest there. And then things kind of fizzled out as talks escalated further. And now he's staying with Missouri. But if I had to make a guess, I still think it ends up being Chesney just because I think Alabama takes care of business against Auburn. And the mystery candidate, I don't know. But what's that?
You think the mystery candidate gets cold feet here?
I'm not convinced the mystery candidate isn't DeBoer, and it wasn't all a smoke screen to try and quiet that front down.
Could be.
But we'll see. The idea of a mystery candidate is obviously intriguing, right? It's it's like if you follow free agency in baseball, there's always the mystery team that pops in and I think the scene of Family Guy, like, yeah, that boat's a boat, but the mystery box could be anything. It could be a boat, right? The mystery candidate could be Kalen DeBoer. It could be whoever. So we'll see what happens. I think if I had to take a guess, I would guess it ends up Chesney. And, I think if Penn State, I will say this, though. If before Penn State makes a hire, if you see Bob Chesney's going to UCLA, that tells you Penn State got their guy. Whoever the mystery candidate is, or DeBoer, whoever it may be, they got one of the big fish across the finish line. Because, it seems by all reports, Bob Chesney has an offer on the table from UCLA, but he wants to wait to see what happens with Penn State before he potentially accepts it.
Bob Chesney is going to either be the head coach at UCLA or Penn State this time next week.
He's not going to be at James Madison. I don't think he's going to be at James Madison's coach as of Monday or Tuesday.
Exactly. This time next week, Bob Chesney is is either a Nittany Lion or a Bruin.
Yes.
Either way, he's going to be in the Big Ten this time. Come this time next week.
I will just say again, the Penn State fans, if you see Chesney goes to UCLA, don't panic. That doesn't mean Penn State swung and missed on him. That means they landed one of the big fish. Because I think Pat Kraft knows Bob Chesney's a fallback. He knows Chesney's always going to be an option if he wants him. So he's not. And he's not gonna hire Chesney until he knows he's not getting one of the big fish.
And I do wonder how Chesney feels in the situation, right? Because he wants a Penn State job, absolutely. Yes. The dudes from down the road, went to Lord's Regional High School. He grew up just miles away from, Mike Rhodes, who grew up down in Monoy. I think Chesney's from Copemont. So, I mean, he wants the job, but I just wonder how it feels to know you're the backup guy.
But I would like to think as a professional, Bob Chesney gets it.
Oh,
right?
I think
you have 2 years as a head coach at James Madison. Before that, you would never coach at the FBS level in any fashion. I would think that he understands it. He knows hey, it's not a knock on me, but if you're a school the caliber of Penn State, if you truly believe you're capable of landing someone who has experience and success as a Power 4 head coach, you have to wait that out. So I think he gets it, but I agree. I'm sure
talk about Chesney quickly and is right. I mean, when I was in college 10 years ago at Kutztown University, he was on the opposing sideline one year coaching Assumption. He went from coaching Assumption 10 years ago to coaching, perhaps being the head coach of Penn State.
He went from that to he like you said, he's definitely going to be in the Big Ten. So I mean, it's and I think too with Bob Chesney. I mean, I know you and I have talked about this a bunch. He definitely wouldn't be my first choice. But I think if you look at it from the Penn State point of view, what is enticing is, you look at James Madison. And when Kurt Signetti left, he took, I think, 13 to 15 players with him, which may not sound like a lot, but those were 13 to 15 key contributing guys, know. So
it's not like he inherited a good program, but he didn't inherit a program full of the top stars.
Yes, we're not talking to circle back to Kalen DeBoer. We're not talking about Kalen DeBoer inheriting Nick Saban's Alabama or, the Jim Harbaugh, Ryan Day, born on third base stuff. Right. He inherited a good, not great program and has kept it chugging along. So, obviously, if it is Chesney, and we'll talk about that a lot one day this week, if it is, he's going to face, with the recruiting and building a staff and things of that nature, like he's never had to deal with before in his life. And that'll be a big test for him. But, yeah, it certainly seems, it's going to be Bob Chesney, mystery candidate, or Kalen DeBoer. As I said, I'm not convinced the mystery candidate isn't Kalen DeBoer, and this isn't all smokescreen to try and get some of that to die down, especially because there have been enough people with ties to the South in the last few days who've mentioned, hey, the Kalen DeBoer to Penn State smoke, regardless of what you want to believe. There's definitely some truth to that where if nothing else, it seems like DeBoer has talked to Penn State and has expressed mutual interest and has not told them no. So we'll see. Again, I think that all hinges on what happens tomorrow night in the Iron Bowl, but we should have a lot more clarity here. And like I said, probably 48 to 72 hours.
Yeah. And here's one thing. I think the one thing that would come from positive from Chesney is, and you could have said the same thing about Franklin, but I think if Chesney got the job, now I don't know if Chesney grew up a Penn State fan, but let's narrow this down. He grew up in the coal country of Pennsylvania and went to a Catholic school. So he either grew up a Penn State fan or a Notre Dame fan. There's no in between. But either way, I think if Chesney got this job, like this would be his holy grail job.
Yes.
If they go and hire somebody else, you can't necessarily say that. I was talking to my good friend Zach Seiko, who runs the Locked On Indie Lions podcast, and he said the thing he likes about Chesney is Chesney seems like a guy who would want to be at Penn State long term. And not that any other coach doesn't want to, but we know we saw what James did quite often during his tenure. He was always flirting with other programs. I don't get the sense that Chesney would necessarily be doing that with Penn State if it worked out. Maybe he does. But I think that would be something that at least would be a positive for Penn State fans. And just the other thing, the guy wins everywhere he goes. I mean, Sal Virginia Seahawks of the Division III level, 23-9. Assumption Greyhounds at the D2 level, 44-16. Holy Cross, 44-21. James Madison, 19-5. He's consistently taking steps up. It's very funny because I like to do this in when I play an NCAA video game. I like to do this. I take a low G5 OC job. I then go to a high G5 OC job, a Power 4 OC job, and then a head coaching job. And I like to build the career up. You look at him, that's exactly what he's done. He's gone from D3 to D2 to FCS to FBS, and now he's going to go from FBS G6 to FBS P4 in the next week, whether that's Penn State or UCLA. I mean, the one thing you can't question is this guy has won everywhere he's gone. He has worked his way up the ladder and is going to be well-deserving of the job that he eventually gets. Now, can you say maybe the Penn State job is a little bit too big of a jump for a guy that 3 years ago was coaching Holy Cross? Sure. I think that's a fair argument. But the guy's won everywhere he's gone. He walks into a room. He owns the room. He's very good at press conferences, just like James Franklin. So they have stuff in common there. But I think if they get him, I can see the vision, as our good friend Clay has been saying, with Bob Chesney. Doesn't mean it's going to work out. Absolutely not. But I can see the vision, and I think he's a better fit than, I know people on boards and stuff have been throwing out the name Josh Heupel. I think he's a better fit than a Josh Heupel, whose offense I don't think would fit in the Big Ten. There's a Big 12 coach whose name has been thrown out there who I don't think would be a good fit for Penn State. Good coach, very good coach. But I don't think he'd be a fit for Penn State. He's in a perfect spot. That name, I think I saw a YouTube video out there about it, so it's not really.
You did, because I saw that same one. But again, he's at the perfect spot for success.
And that name was Kalani Sitake. He should stay at BYU. Sonny Dykes' name was out there from people on their website. That wasn't never going to happen.
No, but I mean, Sonny Dykes might get fired. He might be fired at this time next year.
Right. So, I think Bob Chesney, if he's your backup option, he's a good fit. I could see the vision. Will it work out? I have no idea. But honestly, outside of Kalen DeBoer and maybe one or two, a Kirk Cignetti, when this process started, there was only 2, 3, maybe 4 guys that I would have said, if Penn State hires them, this is absolutely going to work out. Everybody else was a coin flip. And at this point, if it's not Kalen DeBoer, it's going to be a coin flip. And I think Chesney's probably one of the best options out of those coin flips.
Yeah. I mean, you have a lot of good points there, just culturally and that sort of thing. Chesney's going to fit. He's already got ties to the area. So when it comes to making those connections with high schools and that sort of thing, part of that's already done. But again, some point in the next 48 to 72 hours, we should have some clarification there. But before that, most likely before that, because I don't think we hear anything before the game tomorrow, we'll be back tomorrow.
It sounds like Sunday at the earliest.
Yeah, Sunday at the earliest. It seems like the school would like to have an official announcement probably by Monday or Tuesday. You know those things go. If it's going to be announced Tuesday, FAML or whoever it is will break it Sunday or Monday. But
so worth mentioning. Early signing period, not even early at this point, just signing period. The first signing period starts on Wednesday. So
yes,
if you hire a coach Monday or Tuesday, you have a chance to save the last remaining commitments of this class.
Yeah, and if nothing else, too, with that coach, wherever they come from, you get a chance to say, hey, the kids are committed to that school, get them to hold off on signing, and potentially flip it to Penn State. So
yeah, I also think Penn State probably ends up signing maybe 12 or 13 high school kids this cycle. They'll add some guys before the February period, but
I would be lying if I told you I even know how many kids there's.
I think there's 6
recruiting.
I don't know. They lose commitments every other day. So
yeah, I'm looking now. Well, they're currently ranked 118th nationally. They're sitting at 7. So
is that good?
I don't know.
How many schools are there? 136?
136. But
Does
yeah, we'll
Akron
give
have a
you
better class than Penn State?
what's that?
Does Akron have a better class than Penn State?
They may. Joe
The mystery
Moorhead.
candidate's Joe Moorhead,
Joe Moorhead.
actually. No, it's a joke. Don't blame me on that one.
Don't. But yeah, we'll get
somebody's out there watching is gonna take that and run with it now.
They 100% will.
Oh no, Akron's 136 on 3. So,
but yeah, we'll be back tomorrow after the game ends to recap Penn State and Rutgers, see which team gets the bowl eligibility. Maybe there'll be more coaching news to talk about when that time rolls around tomorrow. Who knows? But yeah, for Dylan, I'm Marty. Thank you for being here. As always, like, subscribe, follow the channel. Make sure you have your notifications turned on so that whenever Penn State does make this coaching hire at some point in the next couple of days, yeah, we'll be here to break it down and you can join us. Again, thanks for always being here. Hopefully you join us tomorrow for the post-game show. And, if you can't catch us live, you can always go back on YouTube and check it out. The Whiteout Report podcast here with our friends at Proline TV. Thanks as always for being here, and we'll talk soon.